How old are you now?
88.
And when were you born?
August 26, 1918.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there something weird about your birthday and the way the time changes were? And...
Yeah, I was born at 12:30 on August 26, but at that time I was during the war, the World War One, and they had daylight saving time, and my folks were farmers, so they didn't believe in daylight saving time anyway, and so they said I was born at 11:30 on the 25th. So I celebrated my birthday on the 25th until I got Social Security, and they had it where they keep the records downstate there. They had it the 26th. So I had, since then, my birthday's been the 26th.
Where were you born?
On the farm up above the Lake Ondawa.
So you were born right at the farm?
Yep, born in the house and the farm.
Where was your mother born?
Where was who?
Your mother born?
Well, I'm not positive about that, but my mother, well, let's see. She was a Leonard. Her folks were Bert and Myrtle, and she might have been born over on the below where Tyler's live now, in the house below there. And that is where she lived when her and Dad were going together, so.
What were your parents' names?
Carl and Vernie, Verna. We always, everybody always called her Vernie instead of Verna.
Now what's your full name?
Huh?
What's your full name?
Mine is Vernon Oscar Robbins.
And you have a nickname that everybody calls you?
Everybody calls me Spike.
What's the reason behind the nickname?
Well, the guy named me, and he claimed afterwards he didn't do it, but he did. I was shooting pool over to Troy and down below, back of Bailey's restaurant, I think it was. And I made a spectacular shot, and this guy from Crossroads says, "Spike 'em, Spiker." And so that stuck. I don't know how it did it, but exactly, but it did.
Now, how long ago was that?
Well, that was when I was going to high school. Probably 1935.
You went to Troy to high school?
Yep. Graduated in 1936.
Do you know what your grandmother's name was?
Yeah, on my mother's side, Scott. Her
First name?
first name was Myrtle. Her maiden name was Scott.
And on your father's side?
My father's father and mother was Abijah and Martha.
That's interesting. Now, do you know how far back it was that any relatives came into the country, or?
Well, they were English, I think, but I don't know how far back.
So you're not sure how far back the family immigrated?
I don't know how long ago it was.
Do you remember anywhere past your grandparents?
No, I don't think so.
Now, have they always been in this area? Were they from this area, or?
Well, my dad, his father and mother were all over the place. They'd go from one farm to another. I think they rented farms to begin with. They were up here. I know they lived near Crossroads for a while, but I'm not exactly sure what farm it was. And then I think they rented the Huntington farm for a while. And then my dad's father bought the farm where it's still the Robbins name.
Which is up on the hill?
Huh?
On the one up on the hill.
Yeah.
Do you know where your father was born?
No, I don't. Because they moved around a lot, and I don't know where he was born.
Okay. Do you remember hearing any stories about why your ancestors came to America?
No, not exactly.
What kind of person was your grandmother?
My grandmother Leonard.
Did you met
she,
her?
Huh?
She didn't die before you were born or anything, right?
No, she lived to be 94 years old.
Oh.
Oh, she was a wonderful woman. Everybody thought the world of her. I used to stay there nights when I was a kid. And after I moved here on the farm, I used to stop her once in a while and visit with her.
Now, where was their place at again?
Huh?
Where was their place at again?
Their place is next door over here.
Okay.
The farm next door.
How many children did she have?
7. 2 boys and 7 girls. My dad's family was 5 boys and 2 girls. Just the opposite, only both 7.
How many aunts and uncles do you have on your mother's side?
How many did I have?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had 5 aunts and 2 uncles on my mother's side.
I guess that question would go right along with the one you just answered.
And the one on my dad's side was 5 uncles and 2 aunts.
What were some of your parents' best qualities?
Well, they were church-going people, and they were honest as the day was long. Oh, real honest. My dad didn't drink, didn't smoke. No.
How about their worst qualities?
Huh?
How about their worst qualities?
I don't think they had any, really. He was a good father, I know that. I don't think he ever laid a hand on me or any of my brothers either. But when he looked at you, kind of a stern look, why, you knew that you shouldn't do that.
Did your grandparents or parents have any special talents?
Well, they were good farmers.
Anything like wood carving or instruments or?
Well, my dad was handy at everything, you know. And that's why I was, well, he taught me a lot of things that he could do carpenter work, and he could do a lot of things on the farm that he was real handy.
Wasn't there somebody in the family that made rifles?
Yeah, that was my great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that a little?
Yeah, well, he's buried over on Robbins Hill, over this side of Mainsburg. And there's a cemetery up on the top of the hill there, and that's where he's buried. And he made, it was 70 some rifles. Somebody was telling me the other day that there's one he made was 3 barrels. But they were muzzle loaders. There's one up to Painted Post that I know of that Drew took me one day to a fellow that worked to the Schweitzer aircraft, and he told me he wanted me to go for a ride, and he said, I want you to meet a fellow. And he come up there, and this fellow brought this gun out and put it in my hands, and they took a picture of me, that gun in my hands. And it was a small gun, quite light. And I says, how come that's a smaller gun than most of them? Said it was made for a woman.
Huh.
That a woman had it.
Yeah?
And this guy got a hold of it. And I also saw a fellow here about a month ago that was from Mansfield, and he used to live in New York State. And he had a Robbins gun too.
So there's an actual name on them imprinted with Robbins?
Huh?
What's the name imprinted on them? What's the model called?
W.E. Robbins.
W.E. Robbins?
Yeah.
Was there a special name to the gun?
Yeah, his name was William, I think.
No, to the gun.
No, the gun. Well, they were all muzzle loaders like they used back in those days.
Mm-hmm. About what time did he make those?
Well, it must have been probably in late 1800s and early 1900s, probably.
Can you describe your grandfather?
My great-grandfather?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't have any idea.
How about your grandfather?
Oh, my grandfather, yeah, I can remember him. He had a mustache, I remember. Both of my grandfathers had mustaches. But my dad's father died when I was, well, I can remember seeing him, but I must have been about 2 or 3 years old, because he didn't, and his mother died when I was probably 4 or 5. I can remember her being to our place. I can remember her sitting in the doorway. But then my mother's father, he lived over here, and the last I remember him was on Thanksgiving one year. My cousins and I were outside. There was, I think there must have been snow on the ground, but we was playing out in the field. I think maybe we was riding sleds or something, and he come out and he stood by the pump that was this side of the house, and he hollered dinner was ready. And at Christmas time, he was dead. He'd got pneumonia and died. But then my grandmother, she lived till a long time. She lived to be 94.
And what did she die of?
I don't remember. Just old age, I guess.
Same thing with your parents?
Huh?
Same thing with your parents?
She was pretty good up till that time.
Can you tell a story about either your grandparents or your parents that would characterize them? Something they did or anything they did?
Like in what?
Something that would characterize them, just some story about them.
Well, my mother she was kind of a quiet woman. She didn't go a lot. Dad, he was school director for 24 years.
Which district?
He was kept watch of them and see if they did things right to when they built the Springfield School. You know, be sure that they did things according to the way they were supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me to take his place as school director, and I told him I didn't want any part of it. So I had a school bus at that time. I didn't figure a school bus driver ought to be a school director.
What year did your parents die?
Well, let's see. My dad had cancer. I can't remember exactly. Oh, no, yes, he did. He died in '69. And I'm not sure about the date on my mother. She was about 80, I think. And she was born 1897. And Dad, he was born 1894. And he would have been, he died in September 1969, and so he would have been 75 in November 8th that year.
Yeah.
And my mother, I can't remember exactly.
Was it before or after?
She died after. And after he died, she got what they called hardening the arteries back then. Now they'd probably call it Alzheimer's. But she didn't know me for the last 7 years she lived. She knew Keith because she lived with Keith and Kathy for a good while, but she didn't even know who I was when I'd see her.
Can you describe your siblings?
Huh?
Describe your siblings?
Yeah, well, Leland, he was a year and a half younger than I was, but he's been dead for, I don't know how many years now. I don't remember what year he died.
I think it was in the 80s somewhere, wasn't it?
Huh?
Wasn't it in the 80s somewhere?
Oh no, I think he was less than 75. I think he was maybe around 75. He had emphysema. I don't remember, he had trench mouth before he died, and boy, that was painful. He lived with Phyllis or Troy for the last, and so did his wife, Ruth. They both lived there with Phyllis. But Keith, he's still around. He's 9 years younger than I am. He's 79. Oh, he still lives on, well, not part of the farm, but he bought another farm next to it up there on the hill. He's got 17 miniature horses, and he's got 3 deer. He did have 9 at one time, but now he's got just 3. And he's got a few sheep. But he stops in every week, sometimes twice a week, has coffee with me.
Yeah.
Then we eat lunch together one day a week. I furnish it one week and he furnishes it next. We've done that for the last, I don't know, couple, 3 months.
Yeah. Now, is there just the 3 of you, or are there more?
Huh?
Was there more than just 3 of you? Leland, Keith, and you?
Was there what?
Do you have more siblings?
No,
Just the 3 boys?
just the 3 boys.
Okay.
No. I can remember when Keith was born. Of course, I was 9 years old, or almost, and we was they sent us over to the grandmother's, and I can remember my Aunt Doris, Leonard Chamberlain, she had been up there with them, and she come home, and she says, well, you've got another brother. And I says, oh, shoot. My folks wanted a girl. Somebody asked Keith the other day how come he grew a mustache, or had a mustache, and he says, so they can tell Spike and I apart. And the funny part of it was, he saw a guy just the other day, and there was somewhere around Elmar or somewhere, he see this guy, and this guy called him Spike. So it didn't work, you see.
Are there any family heirlooms or property or anything that have been passed down from generation to generation?
Not that I know of, really.
Okay. Can you tell me of any black sheep in the family?
No, not that I know of either.
That's good. Are there any stories about any famous relatives on either side of the family?
Well, we've got a cousin that's was a vice admiral in the Coast Guard.
I didn't know that.
He was a commander when that out in Hawaii when they had that. Oh, what was it that he run there? He was in the news a lot, I know. And that was Clyde Robbins.
Yeah.
But you see, Clyde and Ray and Lee, Clyde and Lee were twins, and Louise and Jean and Bill, or Wilford his name is, and us, we were double cousins because our mothers were sisters and our dads were brothers. So we were double cousins.
Huh. How did your parents meet?
they lived not too far from each other, and I guess that's why my dad and his brother Howard saw him somewhere, I guess. They cabbaged onto him.
Okay, some of these I've already asked. Did your parents ever tell you about their childhood at all?
Did they ever what?
Tell you about their childhood?
No, not too much. Dad used to tell about different farms they lived on, like that.
And did they both work on the farm?
Yep. Well, then he had a brother who was a school principal in North Syracuse, Clarence. That was my Uncle Clarence, and he had a brother Orrin and a brother Oscar. They were twins. They were the oldest ones in the family. And Oscar was a boat builder out in Minnesota. And he lived right alongside the Mille Lacs Lake, and that's a big lake. He built boats. And Orrin, his twin brother, he had a farm in Lonsbury near Owego. And Clarence, he was a professor in North Syracuse, and my Aunt Mildred was a school teacher. In fact, she was my school teacher in a couple of years in the grade schools. I got kidded about that too. Teacher's pet and all that, but I wasn't. And my Aunt Edith, she married Charles Woodard, and she was, I remember she was hard of hearing, but she was just the opposite of what I am or anybody that's hard of hearing. If there was any noise around, she could hear everything you said. One day my dad and I was over there, and well, Dad, he got a little hard of hearing, and he wasn't bad then, and she was running a wash machine in the back room, and they had a gasoline engine, and they made a lot of noise. We talked right along with her, and she heard every word we said. And when he came out, Dad says, she's different than I am, because he says, if there's anything noise, why, she can hear.
Huh. Were your parents married young?
Huh?
Were your parents young when they were married?
Oh, I think they was, well, let's see. My dad was born in 94. When I was born, he'd have been 18 and 6. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't married too young.
It was both the first marriage for both of them, and
Yeah. Yep. They never married again either. She didn't.
can you tell me a story about your mother? Something she did or the way she was?
Yeah, well, she devoted her time to take care of us kids, and she sewed, and she sewed a lot with the sewing machine, I know. And, she belonged to Ladies' Aid, and went to church, but she lived quite a quiet life.
How about your father?
Well, he always went to church too, and he was, but then he was quite active in the community, and if anything was going on, why, to improve things, he was helping. He always kept his place real neat and clean. It was always neat around those things. In 1936, my dad and mother and Keith went to Minnesota to visit their uncle. And while they were gone, my grandmother, Myrtle Leonard, she stayed with Leland and I and did our cooking. Yeah, I was telling you about the time they went to Minnesota, and while they was gone, Leland and I was working over to neighbors and finishing up the haying. And I know we took about a half a load of hay in the lower barn over there to his place, and they come up a thunder shower. And we stayed in the barn till after the thunder shower was over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we come over home, and I walked in the house, and my grandmother sat there. Here was a big pile of plaster on the floor. I says, "What happened?" Well, she says, "See there beside the chimney?" She says, "Lightning come in on the telephone and followed your gun along, and then exploded off the end of it and blew a hole right out through the side of the house."
Huh.
And she says, "I was sitting here under the telephone, and says the goddamn thing jingled low, so she says, I got up and went in the living room. And since then I'd heard this explosion." She says, "Maybe it's a good thing I moved."
Probably.
And so, and that was, I think around probably towards the latter part of July in 1936. And in 1937, we'd moved the woodshed. We had a big woodshed, and we'd moved it up near the corner of the house, right up close. And we'd filled it full of wood, and apparently the ridge board was boards, and apparently it had leaked down in, and we had a spontaneous combustion and caught fire and burnt the house, and that was on August 23rd, 1937. So we went, Dad and I went in the woods and cut the trees, and took them to sawmill up to Springfield, Rush Gates's, and we got the lumber sawed. And Uncle Howard came, and two other men, and built the house. And December 15th, that same year, we moved into the new house.
That was pretty quick.
And that green lumber cracked and snapped all winter. I'm telling you, that was the noisiest house you ever heard. One wall in the living room bulged right out. It was probably out that far, right? It curved right around.
Is that house still standing?
Well, yeah, part of it's there, but Calvin's built it all over, so you wouldn't recognize it. But it's still there. The old house the year or two before it died, got fire, they just fixed it all over.
Huh.
Fixed it all up, and put siding on it and everything. And I remember the insurance on it, on the house and contents, were $3,300. And that's what we built the house for.
The new one.
It cost $3,300.
Yeah.
And it was a 1.5-story house.
Did you put any electric or plumbing in it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, we had electric at that time. We'd had in 1932 or something, we had a 32-volt plant before the electric come through. And that come through in 36 or 38. The REA.
Mm-hmm.
We had electric 32-volt plant before that.
What's that?
Well, it had car batteries and had a generator that charged those batteries and run it with the gasoline engine.
Huh.
Also run our milker pump.
Okay. Did your mother or father have a good sense of humor?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Can you remember when your mother or father cried? And why?
Oh, no, I don't think my father ever did. Mother might have, but she never did in front of us, so.
What's the saddest event you can remember?
Huh?
What's the saddest event you can remember?
Well, you mean back then, you mean?
Anytime.
Well, when my first wife died was the saddest event I had, when Claire Rose died. She died in May 31st, 1985, and we'd been married 45 years and 2 weeks.
Can you tell me about Claire Rose?
Huh?
Can you tell us about her?
About Claire Rose?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her and I really got along good. She lived in Ulster. I remember I proposed to her one Sunday night, and we got married the next Friday. She never did have an engagement ring, there wasn't time. And the sad part of it was I had a 38 Ford, the best car at that time that I'd ever had. And I didn't have a wedding ring or anything, so on the day before, I stayed for Elmira to the jeweler's to get a wedding ring. And I got down to Wellsburg, and the guy come out of a side street and run in the back end, the back wheel of my car, and tipped me right over and slid right up the road on the side of the top. And so I got the car home, and the next day I had to go to Elmira and get another car, and I went up to Klutz, and I bought a same year car, but I got a coupe instead of a two-door sedan, and next night I went down to Ulster and picked her up, and the people that was going to stand up with us. And, I stopped at Smithfield and asked the preacher if he'd marry us. I said, "We'll be back in about an hour," and he says, "Okay." And he had a stiff neck. It was Reverend Barrett. Well, we went to Athens and picked up the people who was going to stand with us, and that was Larry and Hilda Hicks. And we all had to ride in that coupe. And she sat on his lap. Well, we went back, and then we didn't know that anybody knew anything about our getting married or anything. But it happened that when we went on Monday to get our marriage license, there was a woman in the courthouse that saw us go to get her license. And she told you Dunbar. And so we went in the parsonage over at Smithfield and got married, and we come out, and here was a great long line of tin cans on the car. So we lost them up on Maple Street Avenue in Elmira.
Where did you go after you got married?
Well, that night we didn't go anywhere. We just went around and stopped at different places, I guess, 2 or 3 places. But we, Bus Crandall and Bernice had got married the week or 2 before we did, and they had a shower for them on the next Saturday night, or I guess it was the next night. And I know Gordon Robbins and Bernice were there, and Gordon says, "Where are you going for your honeymoon?" I says, "I don't know if we're going anyplace." Well, he says, "Let's go to Niagara Falls." He says, "I'll take you." So we got in the car after probably 11 o'clock. We went up to Bath and stayed all night. And the next morning we went on to Niagara Falls. So that's where our honeymoon was.
Well, that's good. How did you meet?
Well, we met up to Springfield. Claire Rose was playing the piano in the band there, and her cousin Jack Watkins was a caller, and I saw her, and she was dancing with Cy Gates, and I thought, "Jeepers, that's a pretty girl." And so she, during intermission, Cy Gates had a new car, a new Plymouth, and he said he asked her if she didn't want to go for a ride in his new car. And so, well, I didn't have any girl with me that night. I broke up with my girl, and I'd been going with. And I stood out on the porch there at the hall, and they got into his car, and Cy hollered at me and said, "You want to go ride with us?" So we all sat in the front seat. Well, he got out. When he got back, he got out and went back in the hall, and Claire Rose and I sat there talking a little while. And I asked her, I says, "Would you like to go out with me next week?" And she said, "Sure." So that was the way we met. And I went down the night before I was going to go down and pick her up. There was a dance down to Sequin, and I went in the hall there, and she just quit playing the piano, and she come down across the floor, and a guy on each arm. I thought, man, I haven't got a chance in the world. But I did.
How long did you date before you got married?
I think it was 7 months. I had a milk truck. I hauled to Dama's League, and I had to borrow $35 on my next check to get married. I didn't have that much money.
Now, you've had a number of different jobs over the years. Can you tell me about any of them?
No, yeah. Well, you want all of them?
Sure.
Well, I bought a milk truck in '37, and I hauled milk to Wellsburg, hauled feed, hauled lime, fertilizer, and if somebody moved, why, I moved them. And after that, why, I worked for Schuyler a little while, not very long. That was a feed lumber mill down in Wellsburg. And then I worked for the Remington Rand for 4 months for 40 cents an hour for 3 months, and then they gave me a raise, which was 3 cents an hour. And so I worked another month. I was working nights, a second shift, and I couldn't sleep good days, and so the superintendent of the place, he changed me to days, and then they didn't give me much of anything to do. I just wandered around. I had my job for the week done, usually on Monday afternoon, but I worked there for 4 months, and then I bought the groceries and stuff that was in the store down there at the Big Pond. I had a store for about 1.5 years, and that was, but I got, well, Doc Brown called me numbskull because my head got numb, and so he said I wasn't active enough. He says, that store, he says, isn't active enough. He says, you're used to being active, working. I says, yeah, I know. Well, so I quit that, and I helped Dad for a while on the farm. And let's see, what was my next on then I bought this farm, and
The one across the lake?
all this land here. There was one house on it at the time, and a barn, and an outhouse, and there was a sheep shed up back of the house there. Now there's about 10 places on it. There's 3 of them are apartments, but the rest of them, there's 7 houses. But then I bought a school bus, and I had the school bus for, I think it was 13, let's see, from 47 till 60, yeah. And then I went and learned out to Cary, Illinois, and for a 2-week course to learn artificial breeding. And I was an artificial breeder for about 10 years. And then after that, I took the Star Gazette route. I was a contract carrier for them for 13 years. And I retired in May 3rd, 1981. Then I did odd jobs and quite a lot of carpenter work, and plumbing, heating, and stuff.
Now, when did you build this house?
I built the front part in 58 and 59, and the back part Ray Robbins built in 1960.
And you moved in here in 59?
Huh?
Did you move in here in 59 or?
Well, yeah, we was in this part. We lived in this part mostly when Ray was building the back part. But of course, we'd moved anything we needed to still up the house when we moved out. We was gonna, to start with, we was just gonna have a cabin down here, you know. I just built this part. And we got this built, and Claro says, let's not have, we don't need two houses. She says, let's move down there and put an addition on and put in a garage and bathroom, bedroom, and laundry room. So she brought up the plans for it, and we had Ray build it. And the dam, both dams for the lake, and the road coming in, the driveway, and the house, garage, and all, cost $10,000. You couldn't do that now.
No. No. Now, what did Claire Rose do? Did she just mostly stay around the house, or did she work at all?
She worked for about 2 months to Woolworths once before Christmas. And I didn't like that at all. I was farming. I didn't get my meals on time. I didn't like that at all. Well, most of the time she didn't work. But she had the shack up here and the lunch, you know.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, we built that building up there, and she had a lunchroom. We had a pool table in there.
And that's where the apartments are now, right?
Yeah, but they built on both ends, so it's bigger. But yeah, she had pretty good business there, but we closed up around Christmas time. I know we had a New Year's party there, but next spring she wanted to open it again. Mike and I says, oh, too much for us, too much work.
How long did she have that? Just 1 year?
Yeah, I think it was just 1 year. But then we rented it, and then Harold and Renee lived there for a while.
It was at least 14 years.
No.
Probably longer. 15 or 16.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Well, when she had the shack, I was in the artificial breeding business. I know in 1966, January 15th, I went down Saco and bred a cow. And when I come out, of course, I always reached for my pocket and got a cigarette and lit it. I come out and I didn't have any cigarettes. Well, I stopped over to Kennedy's store and we sold cigarettes. She sold cigarettes here to the shack, so, and I looked at the cigarettes on his counter there, and I says, oh, shoot, I'll wait till I get home. They don't cost so much. And so I waited till I got home, I got a pack of cigarettes and I put them in my pocket. And I reached for them and, habit. And I took them and put them back on the shelf. And pretty soon I went and got them again. I did that 2 or 3 times that day and never did open them. And I haven't taken a puff since. That was January 15th, 1966.
Huh.
And I also studied the paper route in 1968, I think it was. I studied that January 15th too.
Good day.
Yep.
Tell me about your kids, how they were when they were born, when they were young.
Well, Renee was, our first baby was stillborn on March 22nd, 1943. He died, he's buried down here at the cemetery. His name was Gary Earl. He was named after her father, but then Renee was born April 20th, 1944. And I can remember the nurses down the hospital told, she was born in Sayre, and the nurses down the hospital told Claire Rose, says, well, you got a nice baby girl, and says it was born on Hitler's birthday. Claire Rose says, oh my gosh, she says, I never do anything right. Or that was back when Hitler was really a villain. Then we didn't have any more till Mike was born. He was born on April 29th, 1948. So.
And what were they like when they were kids?
Oh, they was good kids, naturally. Renee was hard of hearing, I think, from the time she was born. But we wasn't sure till, well, when Mike was born, I went down to get Claire Rose and Mike from the hospital, and I left Renee up to my mother and dad's, and they was the ones that told me, and says, I think that Renee's hard of hearing. And she was 4 years old. I know I told Claire Rose on the way home, she cried a little over that, but she's had a hearing aid ever since she was about 5 or 6.
Now, did the kids do anything special in school, sports, or?
Well, she always got along good in school for being hard of hearing. She always got pretty fair marks. But and I don't know, Mike, I guess he got good marks. He didn't, the teachers didn't call us or anything.
Now, where was Mike born?
He was born in Sayre.
Sayre. Was there anything that either child did when they were small that really amazed you?
That what?
Amazed you?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember.
Anything unusual they did?
I don't know. I always thought that Renee was exceptional for as hard of hearing as she was. Now she's quite a businesswoman.
What did you find most difficult about raising children?
I don't know. I never had any trouble with them, I guess.
What was the hardest choice you ever had to make?
Hardest choice?
Hmm?
God, I don't know. Might have been when I bought the farm, but I don't think so. The hardest, because we'd always, Claire Rose had always, she always wanted this farm. She liked the house. It was a nice house.
Now, can you tell us about Doris?
Yeah, we were married on January 1st, 1960. No. Let's see. 1967. Let's see. No. Wait a minute. No, it's later than that.
It'd have to be after 80, 86.
Huh?
It'd have to be after 85.
Yeah, I was married. Yeah, we were married. Let's see, a year and. I was 60 or 70, 77 or.
Could be 87.
Huh?
It would be 87.
87.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when it was, I guess. It was 87.
Grandma died in 85.
Yeah. I know it's a year and 7 months, I think. And so it must have been 87.
Oh.
January 1st.
How long had you known her?
Well, she was in the same class I was in Troy, but I didn't really know her because she wasn't in my classes or anything. We just didn't go in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
But we met again our 50th anniversary over to the Vets Club, and I was single then, of course, and because that was in '86. I went over and talked with her a little while, and I think one of us had to go. I don't know whether it was her or me that left, and when he come back, why, I didn't get much chance to talk to her or anything. Then I think I don't remember whether I called her or what, or whether I see her somewhere, but I asked her for a date, and we went out, and when we finished the date, she told me, she says, I guess I don't want to go anymore. Says, I've got some women I'm playing cards with, and says I'm quite satisfied with my life. And I says, okay. So I kind of forgot it. And I don't remember how it come about, but she invited me over for supper one night. And the same day that I was going over to supper with her, why Don called me, her son, and he says, "Why don't you get a date with my mother?" He says, "You was out with her once, but," he says, "I think you ought to see." He says, she's a heck of a good cook. And he says, "I think you and her'd get along good." Well, I says, "You're too late to suggest it, because I'm going over to her house tonight for supper." Well, he says, "Good." I never told his mother he was trying to matchmaking, but then we got along pretty good. Yeah, that was in '86, and we got married in '87.
And how long were you together?
Well, we were married 17 years, or almost. The 1st of January, we would have been married 17 years, but she died September 21st. And that was in 2003, so she's been dead 3 years and a month.
What's the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
Huh?
What's the most beautiful place you've ever visited?
That's a tough one. On the most different place that I ever visited was New Orleans.
How long ago was that?
Well, I don't know, probably Doris and I went. We'd been married about 3 years, so it must have been around 1990, because I remember we rode on a train all the way down. We got on at New Jersey, I think it was. We was 27 hours on that train. And I can remember we sat there in the seat and we was kind of huddled up together, and this woman come along that worked on the train there, and she says, "You act like a couple of newlyweds." Well, I says, "We haven't been married too long." Oh, she says, "You haven't?" But coming home, we come back on the train, and they had an air conditioning thing that blew right on my head. And boy, was I sick for about 2 or 3 weeks. Ended up, I was really sick. Really gave me a cold. But, we did a lot of camping, Clara Rose and I.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Tell me about that.
Well, we camped in a heck of a lot of different places. We camped down to Hornbrook most of one summer. I remember the Elwood Spencer, he was the mayor of Towanda. And one day we was down there visiting Chuck Young and his wife, and this Elwood Spencer was there, and Chuck Young knew him quite well. And he says to me, we had a trailer that we just got, and he says, "Why don't you come down and camp?" He says, "Bring that new trailer you got down." I says, "I can't." I says, "I haven't got any hitch on my car yet." Well, he says, "Heck, that's no problem." He says, "I'll go get it." And Well, for some reason, I didn't go. Chuck Youngs says, well, I'll go with him. And so he come up with his car and got my trailer. When he got back, he says, God, he says, I don't blame you for not camping. He says, you got a hell of a good campsite up there. So we went, we camped down there, and him and I cleared off a place on the island. They just built a road over across the river there at Hornbrook goes down through like this, and then there's a place around that there's water on the side of it. And they put a road across that place. And so we went over on the island, we cleared off places and camped on the island. That was 1972. And I never knew why, but we decided, for some reason, we took our trailers home before that weekend of the 72. And if we'd left our trailers there was one guy that did. He wasn't on the island, he was over on the mainland, that was higher yet. And his trailer ended up down the river and caught up on a barbed wire fence. And ours would have been gone too. But we never knew why we did that, and why we took him home.
So what was the flood like in this area?
Where was,
What was the flood like in this area?
well, up here it wasn't so bad. But down there, well, I went on my paper route, and down Monroton, Claros was with me that day, and down Monroton, the water run in over the floorboards in my station wagon. And about a month or so after that, transmission went out of it. Still think it was from running in that. But that was really something. There was water everywhere.
Well, I'm about out of questions and almost out of tape. Can you think of anything else to tell the grandkids and the great-great-grandkids and the great-great-great-grandkids?
Oh.
Any good stories or memories?
No, I've got a lot of them. Some of them I can't remember the names. I was telling Harold Thursday night about the flood there and talking about it, and then 72, and I says, I can't remember what that guy's name was that camped with us down there, and he was the mayor of Towanda, and Harold, he didn't know him. I got back down here, and well, I finally remembered, I says his first name was Elwood, but I couldn't remember his last name. But when I got back down to the house, why, that popped into my head. His last name was Spencer.
Anything else?
Oh, think of much. I just heard today that, well, Mary May there died, and that's when I went to calling hours last night. Harry Henry down Bentley Creek just died, and also Mary Frances Yorkish used to be. I don't know what her last name was, but she just died. I knew her. God, well, dying off.
Begins to happen.
Yeah. Well, I often think of it that there isn't. The people I grew up with in Big Pond, they're all gone. You know, all the ones that were anywhere near my age. A lot of them were younger too.
What's the most exciting thing you've ever done?
The what?
Most exciting thing you've ever done?
No, gosh, I don't know. Never got too excited.
Any amusement park rides or
Huh?
any amusement park rides or trips or
No, I don't think of anything.
now you had a garden for a long time.
Huh?
Said you did gardening for a long time.
I did what?
Gardening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to have a good garden. When I lived on a big pond, I raised a lot of chickens. And I had a couple of rain shelters. I put them on the garden. And when I sold the chickens, why I took the rain shelters off and spread the manure all over the garden. Wow, talk about garden. That, all that hen manure, clear stuff, you know. That really raised it. Yeah, went down the big pond there when we moved in that house. There was no running water, no furnace or nothing. We heated the stove. The guy lent us a cook stove. We had a heat troll in the living room, but it was a cozy place. I mean, the wind never blew down there, and we was always warm enough. I dug a ditch and piped the spring in the kitchen. Then I put a toilet in. We didn't get a bathroom, but we had a toilet. We had a little lavatory sink in the kitchen.
How long were you living there?
4 years.
And then you moved up on the hill?
Yeah, then we moved up here.
And you lived there probably about 20 or 30 years?
Well, we lived there from 1945 till 1960. 15 years. Seems longer than that because it's farming. I liked the farming, but it got so that you had to have more cows than the farm would handle, and all the land around me was all spoken for. I couldn't buy any more. I was offered some that I was working up on the hill or up where Glen Dunbar is, but I figured he wanted a little too much for it. He had 40 acres and he wanted $4,000. Today that wouldn't be much, you know. But I remember when I started renting a farm up there, there was, well, it was partly woods. And I don't remember how many acres there was, but I rented some. And Romy Dunbar said, he says, that fields up there won't even raise a commotion. And then when I cleaned out a box stall and put on one field, and my God, the darndest hay you ever saw in your life. And then, funny part of it was his son Laverne, he bought it. He's the one that gave $4,000 for it. I thought, that's good. I said, there, he said it wouldn't raise a commotion, and his son bought it.
That's funny.